A dusty afternoon on the edge of a little town. The sun was blazing hot, shining down like it wanted to cook everything. The air felt heavy, like you could grab it with your hands. Out there, all by herself, sat a woman on an old, wobbly bench. Her clothes were ripped and dirty, and her hair looked like a bird's nest after a storm. If you walked by, you'd think she was just a homeless lady, someone nobody cared about. But guess what? Looks can fool you, and boy, were they about to fool some people big time. Hey, before we get started, I've got a fun question for you. Have you ever looked at someone and thought you knew everything about them, but then you were totally wrong? Tell me about it in the comments below. Oh, and where are you watching from today? If you like cool stories like this one, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on what's coming next. Her name was Clara. Simple name, right? But Clara wasn't simple, not even a little bit. Most people in that town didn't even look at her. They'd walk right past, noses in the air, like she was invisible. Maybe they thought she didn't matter. Maybe they thought she was just trash on the side of the road. But that day, oh, that day was different. That day, trouble rolled into town on two wheels, loud and mean. It started with a rumble. A deep, growly sound that shook the ground. Then they showed up, a gang of bikers. Their motorcycles were shiny and loud, roaring like angry lions. They wore tough leather jackets, the kind that make you look strong and scary. Their faces had mean stares, like they were ready to fight anyone who got in their way. These guys thought they were the kings of the town. They acted like everything belonged to them: the streets, the air, even the people. Clara didn't move. She just sat there on her shaky bench, quiet as a mouse. Her hands held tight to an old, beat-up bag. That bag looked like junk, torn up, stained, the kind of thing you'd throw away without a second thought. The bikers didn't care about her or her bag. They didn't think she was worth their time. But here's the secret they didn't know: that bag was special. Inside it was something huge, something worth way more than all their fancy bikes put together. Crazy, right? Stick around, because this story's about to get wild. The leader of the bikers was a big guy. His name was Spike. He had a scruffy beard that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks, and his eyes were sharp, like a hawk looking for something to grab. Spike stopped his bike right in front of Clara's bench. The engine growled, then went quiet. He looked down at her, and a nasty grin spread across his face. His buddies parked their bikes too, making a circle around her. It was like they were trapping her, like she was a little bug they could squish. Clara didn't look up. She kept her head down, staring at the ground. Her fingers squeezed that tattered bag even tighter. Spike laughed, a loud, mean laugh that echoed down the empty street. "Hey, old lady," he said, his voice rough like sandpaper. "What are you doing here? This is our spot." His friends laughed too, like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. They didn't know it yet, but they were picking on the wrong person. See, Clara wasn't just some random lady. She had a story, a big one. Nobody in that town knew it, not the bikers, not the people walking by, not even the birds in the trees. She looked poor and weak, but that was just a trick. It was like she was wearing a costume, hiding who she really was. And who was she? Oh, you're going to love this part. Clara wasn't homeless. She wasn't poor. She was someone important, someone with a secret so big it could flip this whole town upside down. The bikers didn't see that. They only saw what was on the outside: dirty clothes, messy hair, a sad little bench. They thought she was nothing. Spike kicked some dirt toward her with his big black boot. "You don't belong here," he said, crossing his arms like he was the boss of everything. "Get lost, or we'll make you sorry." His buddies nodded, cracking their knuckles like they were ready to start trouble. But Clara? She didn't budge. She didn't cry or run away. She just sat there, still as a statue. If you looked close, though, you'd see something in her eyes. A tiny spark, like a fire waiting to grow. She wasn't scared of these guys. She'd seen worse. She'd been through tougher stuff than a bunch of loud bikers with bad attitudes. And that bag she was holding? It wasn't just junk. It was her ticket to something amazing. Let me give you a little hint: Clara wasn't what she seemed. She was like a superhero in disguise, waiting for the right moment to show her powers. The bikers thought they were in charge, but they were about to learn a big lesson. What do you think's in that bag? Gold. A magic wand? Something even cooler? Don't guess yet, we're just getting started. The town around them was quiet. A few people peeked out their windows, watching the bikers hassle Clara. Nobody said anything. Nobody helped. They all figured she was just some poor lady who didn't matter. That's how it had been for a while. Clara's sitting there, people ignoring her, life going on like she wasn't even there. But that day, everything was about to change. The bikers didn't know it, but they just kicked a hornet's nest. And Clara? She was the queen bee, ready to sting. So there she was, one woman against a gang of tough guys. The sun kept burning down, the air stayed thick, and the bikers kept laughing. They thought they had all the power. They thought Clara was weak and alone. But looks can trick you, and Clara was the best trick of all. What's her secret? How's she going to turn this around? You'll find out soon. Just keep watching, because this story's got some big surprises coming your way. The bikers were back, and they weren't happy. Their leader was a big, tough guy named Spike. He had a scruffy beard that looked like it was made of prickly bushes, and his grin was mean like a fox that just caught a chicken. He stood in front of Clara, the quiet lady on the bench, and kicked a big puff of dirt right at her. It flew up in a cloud, sticking to her old, torn clothes. "Hey, lady," he said, his voice loud and rough, "this ain't your spot. Get out of here." His biker friends laughed, their voices bouncing around like loud thunder. They moved their bikes closer, circling her like a pack of wolves ready to pounce. "Move it, or we'll make you," Spike yelled, crossing his arms like he was the king of the world. Clara didn't move an inch. She didn't jump or shake or cry. She just sat there on her rickety bench, calm as a sunny day. Slowly, she lifted her head and looked up at Spike. Her eyes were steady, like a still pond with no ripples. If you looked close, though, you'd see a tiny spark in them, a little light that nobody else noticed. It was like she had a secret fire inside her, waiting to burst out. "I'm not hurting anyone," she said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it was strong too, like a quiet wind that could push a tree over if it tried hard enough. Spike didn't like that. He made a loud, ugly sound, a scoff, like he thought she was silly. "You're trash," he said, pointing at her with a dirty finger. "And this town don't need trash like you." His buddies laughed again, even louder this time. They started throwing mean words at her, like they were tossing rocks. "Get lost, you old hag," one shouted. "Nobody wants you here," another yelled. They kept going, their voices sharp and nasty, trying to make Clara feel small and scared. It was like a game to them, picking on the quiet lady who didn't fight back. But here's a sneaky little hint for you, Clara wasn't scared at all. Nope, not even a tiny bit. These bikers were loud and mean, but she'd seen worse, way worse. She'd been through tough stuff that would make Spike run away crying. Their mean words? They didn't break her. Instead, she did something smart. Every time they said something cruel, she tucked it away in her mind, like she was saving it up for later. It was like she was building something secret, something big. What do you think she's planning? Is she going to yell back? Run away? Or something way cooler? Don't go anywhere, you're going to find out soon. Spike stepped closer, his big boots crunching the dirt. He leaned down, his scruffy beard almost touching her face. "You deaf or something?" he growled. "I said move." His friends kept circling on their bikes, making the air rumble with their engines. The noise was so loud it shook the ground a little. They wanted her to jump up and run, to show she was afraid. That's what they liked, making people feel weak. But Clara? She just sat there, holding her tattered bag tight. She didn't even blink. One of the bikers, a skinny guy with a pointy nose, revved his engine super loud. "Look at her," he shouted, laughing. "She's too dumb to even run." Another one, with a big scar on his cheek, threw an empty soda can at her feet. It bounced in the dirt, making a clinking sound. "Go back to the dump where you belong," he said. They all thought it was hilarious. To them, Clara was just a nobody, a quiet, dirty lady they could boss around. But Clara's eyes stayed calm. That spark inside them, it didn't go away. If anything, it got a little brighter. She wasn't shaking or sweating or begging them to stop. She just watched them, like a cat watching a bunch of noisy dogs. Every mean thing they said, every laugh they threw at her, she stored it up. It was like she had a secret box in her head, and she was filling it with all their nastiness. Why? What was she going to do with it? You'll see, it's going to be awesome. Spike got mad that she wasn't scared. He didn't like it when people didn't listen to him. You think you're tough, huh? He said, spitting on the ground near her bench. We'll see how tough you are when we drag you out of here. His buddies cheered, pumping their fists in the air. They were like a team of bullies, trying to make her feel tiny. The skinny biker rode his bike so close that the wheel almost hit her leg. Oops, he said, pretending it was an accident, but his grin showed he meant it. Clara still didn't move. She looked at Spike, then at the others, her face as cool as ice. You don't have to be so mean, she said quietly. Her words were simple, but they hit like little darts. Spike's grin slipped for a second, like he wasn't sure what to say. Then he laughed again, harder this time. Mean? Ha! You ain't seen mean yet, he said. He cracked his knuckles, making a loud popping sound, like he was getting ready to do something bad. The air felt even thicker now. The sun was still hot, beating down on everyone. The bikers kept circling, their bikes growling like angry animals. People in the town stayed far away, peeking from windows but not coming close. They didn't want trouble with Spike and his crew. Everyone knew these guys were rough. They'd been bossing people around for a long time, acting like they owned everything. And Clara? She was just one lady, sitting there all alone. It looked like she didn't stand a chance. But that's the trick, she wasn't as helpless as she looked. Those calm eyes, that little spark, the way she held her bag so tight. It all meant something. She wasn't just taking their meanness and doing nothing. She was waiting, like a hunter waiting for the perfect shot. The bikers thought they were winning, but they didn't know they were walking right into a trap. What kind of trap? Oh, it's going to be so good you won't believe it. Spike kicked more dirt, this time hitting her bench. Last chance, lady, he said, his voice low and growly. Get up, or we'll knock you down. His crew tightened their circle, their bikes so close the heat from the engines warmed the air around her. It was loud, it was scary, and it was mean. But Clara just looked at them, her hands still on that bag. She wasn't going anywhere, not yet. So there they were, Spike and his bikers, big and tough, thinking they could do whatever they wanted. And Clara, small and quiet, sitting like she didn't care. The tension was building, like a storm ready to break. Something big was coming. Can you feel it? What's she going to do? Keep watching, this is where it gets really exciting. Days went by, and the bikers didn't stop. They kept coming back to Clara's little bench like it was their favorite game. Every time they showed up, their big, shiny motorcycles roared loud enough to shake the whole street. They'd rev their engines for room, just to make her jump. Sometimes they'd grab trash, like old cans or wrappers, and toss it right at her feet. It'd pile up in the dirt, making a messy little mountain. They laughed and shouted mean things, thinking it was so funny to pick on the quiet lady. But Clara? She didn't yell or run or even look mad. She just stayed quiet, sitting there like nothing could touch her. But here's where it gets interesting, she started doing something weird. After the bikers left, speeding off with their noisy bikes, Clara would reach into her tattered bag. She'd pull out a tiny notebook, so small it could fit in your hand. Then, with a little pencil, she'd scribble stuff down real fast. Her hand moved quick, like she didn't want anyone to see. What was she writing? Nobody knew, not the bikers, not the people peeking from their windows, not even the birds chirping in the trees. It was her secret, and she kept it locked up tight in that notebook. Was it a list? A plan? A story? You'll find out soon, just keep reading. The bikers didn't notice her writing. They were too busy being loud and mean. Every day, they'd roll up, engines growling, and try something new to bother her. One time, the skinny biker with the pointy nose threw a rotten apple. It splattered near her bench, making a stinky mess. Eat that, lady, he yelled, laughing like it was the best joke ever. Another day, the guy with the scar on his cheek spit on the ground right by her feet. That's where you belong, he said. They thought she was weak because she didn't fight back. But Clara wasn't weak, she was smart. Then came a day that changed everything. Spike, the big, tough leader with the scruffy beard, decided he'd had enough of her sitting there all calm. He wanted to really show her who was boss. The sun was high in the sky, hot and bright, when he roared up on his bike. His buddies followed, circling the bench like usual. But this time, Spike didn't just yell or kick dirt. He jumped off his bike, stomped over to Clara, and grabbed her tattered bag right out of her hands. "Let's see what you're hiding, huh?" he said, his voice loud and rough. Clara didn't scream or try to grab it back. She just watched him, her eyes steady and cool. Spike turned the bag upside down and shook it hard. Stuff fell out into the dirt: a few shiny coins, some crumpled papers, and a rusty old key. The coins clinked as they hit the ground, rolling a little. The papers fluttered down like dry leaves. And the key? It landed with a tiny thud, looking old and scratched up, like something you'd find in a junk pile. Spike stared at it all and laughed, a big, mean laugh that made his beard shake. "This all you got, huh?" he said. "What a joke. You really are trash." His buddies laughed too, pointing at the stuff in the dirt. "Coins and a dumb key," the skinny one shouted. "She's got nothing," the Scarface guy added. They thought it was hilarious. Clara's whole life spilled out, and it looked like junk to them. They figured they'd won, that they'd finally made her look small. But here's the thing, Clara didn't care what they thought. Her face didn't change, not one bit. No frown, no tears, nothing. She just leaned down, slow and calm, and picked up that rusty key. She held it tight in her hand, like it was the most important thing in the world. Spike stopped laughing for a second. He squinted at her, like he wasn't sure why she wasn't upset. "What's so special about that stupid key?" he asked, crossing his arms. Clara didn't answer. She just looked at him, that little spark in her eyes getting brighter. The bikers didn't know it yet, but that key wasn't junk. Oh no, it was about to unlock a whole lot of trouble for Spike and his crew. Trouble they never saw coming. The air felt heavy now, like something big was building up. The bikers kept chuckling, kicking at the coins and papers in the dirt. "She's got nothing worth taking," one of them said. But Clara's quietness made them a little uneasy. Usually, people yelled or cried when they got messed with. Not Clara. She was different, and that started to bug Spike. He didn't like it when things didn't go his way. "You think you're tough, sitting there all quiet," he growled. "We'll see how long that lasts." Clara tucked the key back into her bag, along with the coins and papers. She moved slow, like she had all the time in the world. Then she pulled out her tiny notebook again and started writing. Right there, in front of them. Spike's jaw dropped a little. "What are you scribbling, huh?" he barked, stepping closer. But Clara didn't stop. She just kept writing, her pencil scratching across the page. The bikers looked at each other, confused. Was she making fun of them? Was she crazy? They didn't get it. "Here's a fun question for you, what would you do if someone messed with you like that? Would you fight back right away, or wait for the perfect moment to surprise them? Drop your answer in the comments, I want to know." Clara didn't fight, not yet. She was waiting, and that waiting was driving Spike nuts. He snatched at the notebook, but she pulled it back just in time. "Give me that," he yelled, but she held it tight, her face still calm. The bikers didn't know what to do. They'd never met someone like Clara before, someone who didn't scare easy, someone who didn't care about their loud bikes or mean words. That rusty key she picked up? It was old and ugly, but it meant something big. And that notebook? It was full of secrets that were going to turn everything upside down. The bikers thought they were in charge, but they were wrong. Clara was playing a game they didn't even know about. The sun started to dip lower, turning the sky orange. The bikers got back on their bikes, still laughing, but it wasn't as loud now. They sped off, leaving dust and trash behind. Clara watched them go, then opened her notebook again. She wrote a few more words, a tiny smile on her lips. What was she up to? What did that key unlock? "You're so close to finding out, don't stop now." Then came the day everything turned upside down like a roller coaster hitting the big drop. The bikers rolled into town like they always did, their loud engines growling and their tires kicking up dust. They thought it'd be another day of picking on Clara, the quiet lady on the bench. But this time, something was different. Clara didn't stay small and silent. Nope, she stood up tall, like a tree that wouldn't bend in a storm. She brushed the dirt off her old coat with her hands, slow and steady, and looked right at the bikers. "You've had your fun," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Now it's my turn." Spike, the big leader with the scruffy beard, laughed loud. "Your turn," he said, his voice all rough and mean. "What's a nobody like you gonna do?" His buddies laughed too, slapping their knees like it was the funniest thing ever. They thought Clara was joking. They thought she was still the weak, quiet lady they could push around. But oh boy, were they in for a surprise, a big one. Just then, something crazy happened. A shiny black car rolled up behind Clara. It wasn't loud like the bikes, it was smooth and quiet, like a cat sneaking through the grass. The door opened, and out stepped a man in a fancy suit. He looked important, with slick hair and a serious face. He walked right over to Clara and handed her a phone, then stood there waiting, like she was the boss. The bikers stopped laughing. Their eyes got wide, and they looked at each other, confused. "What's going on?" the skinny biker whispered. Nobody knew, not yet. Clara took the phone and pressed some buttons. She held it to her ear and said a few words, too quiet for anyone to hear. The bikers stared, their mouths hanging open a little. Spike crossed his arms, trying to look tough, but you could tell he was starting to worry. Then whoosh, a loud buzzing filled the air. Everyone looked up. A helicopter was flying right over them, its blades spinning fast like a giant fan. It was so loud the ground shook a little. The bikers froze, like statues made of ice. What was happening? This wasn't their game anymore. Clara put the phone down and turned to Spike. Her eyes weren't soft or calm now, they were sharp, like a knife cutting through paper. She stepped closer, and her voice came out strong and clear, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My name's Clara Hensworth," she said. "Ever heard of Hensworth Industries? That's mine. Billions of dollars, thousands of jobs, all mine. And this town? I just bought it." The words hit like a thunderclap. Spike's jaw dropped so low it almost touched the ground. The tough guy's face went pale, like he'd seen a ghost. His buddies looked like they wanted to run, but their feet wouldn't move. "Hensworth Industries," the Scarface biker muttered. That's the big company with all the money." He was right. Hensworth Industries was huge, like, bigger than your school huge. It made stuff, built things, and had stores all over the world. And Clara? She wasn't just some lady on a bench. She was the boss of it all, the queen with billions of dollars and power nobody could imagine. The bikers had been messing with a billionaire this whole time, and they didn't even know it. Clara reached into her tattered bag and pulled out that rusty key, the one Spike had laughed at before. She held it up high, letting the sunlight bounce off it. "This key," she said, her voice cutting through the air. "It opens my old safe. The one with proof I own everything you see." She pointed around at the streets, the houses, the trees, even the dirt under their feet. "This town is mine now. And you? You're done here." Spike blinked fast, like he couldn't believe it. "You're lying," he shouted, but his voice was shaky now, not tough. "You can't be that, Clara. You're just a dirty nobody." He wanted it to be a trick. He wanted her to be joking. But the helicopter kept buzzing overhead, and the man in the suit stood there, nodding like everything Clara said was true. The bikers started whispering to each other, their faces turning red. They'd been so mean, so loud, and now they looked silly like clowns who tripped over their own big shoes. Clara didn't yell or laugh at them. She didn't need to. She just stood there, tall and strong, letting the truth sink in. That rusty key? It wasn't junk. It was the key to a safe full of papers that showed she owned the town, the land, everything. She'd been hiding who she really was, dressed in old clothes, sitting on that bench like a regular person. Why? Maybe she wanted to see who was nice and who was mean. Maybe she was testing the town. And guess what? The bikers failed big time. The black car's engine hummed softly, and the helicopter circled lower, making the wind blow Clara's messy hair. She looked like a superhero now, not a quiet lady. Spike took a step back, his boots crunching in the dirt. You can't do this," he stammered. But Clara smiled a small, smart smile. I already did, she said. You thought I was nothing. You were wrong. The bikers didn't know what to say. The skinny one dropped his soda can, and it rolled away in the dust. The Scarface guy rubbed his eyes, like he thought he was dreaming. They'd spent days, weeks, messing with Clara, throwing trash, calling her names. They thought she was weak because she didn't fight back. But she didn't fight because she didn't have to. She had something better, power, real power, the kind that doesn't need loud bikes or mean words. The helicopter's noise got louder, and the man in the suit stepped forward. Miss Hensworth, he said, all polite, everything's ready. Clara nodded, like she'd planned this all along. She turned back to Spike, holding that key like a prize. You laughed at this, she said. You laughed at me. But this key? It's worth more than you'll ever have. Spike's tough guy face was gone now. He looked small, like a kid caught stealing cookies. The truth was out, and it hit hard. Clara wasn't just rich, she was the richest. She wasn't just strong, she was the strongest. The bikers had picked on the wrong person, and now they were stuck. The town was hers, and they couldn't boss anyone around anymore. Clara stood there, the wind from the helicopter blowing around her, and for the first time, she looked like who she really was, a billionaire in disguise, ready to take charge. The bikers were in big trouble now, and they didn't even see it coming. Clara raised her hand, just a little wave, and suddenly, police cars rolled up fast. Their lights flashed red and blue, and their sirens made a loud wail, wee-oh-oh, wee-oh-oh. Turns out, Clara had been super smart this whole time. That tiny notebook she kept writing in? It wasn't just scribbles. She'd been recording every mean thing the bikers said, every insult, every threat, every nasty word. She wrote it all down, like a secret list, and now the police had it. Spike and his crew didn't have a chance. The cops jumped out of their cars and grabbed the bikers. Spike's face went red, and he started yelling, "This ain't fair. We didn't do nothing bad." But it didn't matter. The notebook told the truth, pages and pages of their meanness. The skinny biker with the pointy nose tried to run, but a cop caught him by his jacket. The Scarface guy just mumbled, "We were just joking," but nobody believed him. They got pushed into the police cars, still muttering excuses, but it was too late. They were hauled off, and the town got quiet again. Clara wasn't done, though. She didn't just stop the bikers, she made everything better. With all her billions of dollars, she started fixing up the town. She built new homes, pretty ones with bright paint and big windows. She made jobs so people could work and buy stuff they needed. And where her old, wobbly bench used to be, she turned that spot into a park. It had green grass, a playground with swings, and even a little fountain that splashed water. Kids ran around laughing, and grown-ups sat on new benches, smiling. The town didn't look sad or dusty anymore, it looked happy and alive. The people who used to walk past Clara without looking? Now they couldn't stop thanking her. "You're amazing, Clara," they'd say, shaking her hand. "We're so sorry we didn't help you before." They felt bad for ignoring her when she looked poor and lonely. Now they saw who she really was, a kind, strong lady who cared about them. They brought her flowers and cookies, and some even hugged her. Clara just smiled and said, "It's okay. I wanted to see who was good at heart." And that tattered bag she always carried? It wasn't junk, it was full of important papers. Those papers showed she'd been testing the town all along. She wanted to know who'd be nice to a poor-looking lady and who'd be mean. It was like a big game, and she'd been watching everyone. The bikers. They failed big time. They were cruel when they thought she was weak. But the truth was out now, and justice was served. Clara made sure the town learned a lesson: be kind, because you never know who someone really is. The sun was going down, painting the sky with pretty colors: orange, pink, and a little bit of purple. It hung low over the town, a town that looked so much better now. Clara stood there, watching it all, a tiny smile on her face. She didn't say much, but she didn't have to. Everything around her showed what she'd done. The new houses sparkled in the fading light, the park buzzed with kids laughing, and the air felt fresh, like a big, happy breath. Clara had been invisible to everyone before. Nobody saw her, nobody cared. But that didn't mean she was weak. Oh no, she was strong, stronger than anyone ever guessed. Think about it, Clara sat on that rickety bench for days, maybe weeks, looking like she had nothing. People walked by, heads high, not even glancing her way. The bikers laughed and threw trash, thinking she was just a nobody. But she wasn't. She was a billionaire, a big-time boss with a secret plan. She stayed quiet, not because she was scared, but because she was smart. She watched, she waited, and then bam, she showed everyone who she really was. That's the cool thing about Clara. She didn't need to yell or fight to win. She just used her brain and her heart, and that made her the strongest of all. Sometimes, the quiet ones, the ones everyone forgets about, are the ones with the most power. You don't always see it right away. They don't have loud voices or flashy clothes. They don't brag or show off. But inside, they've got something special, something big. Clara was like that. She looked small and poor, but she was huge inside. She had billions of dollars, sure, but more than that, she had courage. She faced mean bikers and a town that ignored her, and she didn't let it break her. Instead, she turned it all around and made everything better. That's real strength, right there. So here's something to think about: next time you see someone who looks down on their luck, don't be so quick to judge. Maybe they're sitting on a bench, clothes all torn, looking sad. Maybe they're quiet, not saying much. You might think they're weak or unimportant, but what if they're not? What if they're like Clara, hiding something amazing? They could be strong, smart, or even a secret hero waiting for their moment. You never know who someone really is just by looking. That's what Clara's story teaches us: don't judge too fast, because surprises are everywhere. Imagine if the bikers had been nice to Clara instead of mean. Maybe they'd have a park named after them now, not handcuffs on their wrists. Imagine if the town had stopped to say hi or offer her a sandwich. They'd have known her sooner, and she'd have smiled at them, not tested them. Being kind doesn't cost anything, but it can change everything. Clara didn't need people to be nice to her, she was fine on her own. But she wanted to see who would be, and that's why she stayed quiet so long. She gave everyone a chance, and some people passed, but a lot failed. Which one would you be? The sun dipped lower, almost gone now, and Clara turned to walk away. Her old coat didn't look so shabby anymore, it looked like a cape, like something a superhero would wear. She'd changed the town, not with fights or shouts, but with a rusty key and a little notebook. She proved that you don't have to be loud to be big. You don't have to look rich to have power. Sometimes, the people everyone overlooks are the ones who can move mountains, or at least buy a whole town and make it shine. What's your big takeaway from Clara's story? Did it make you think about how you see people? Maybe it's about being kind, or maybe it's about staying strong even when things are tough. For me, it's about surprises, how anyone can be more than they seem. You might pass a Clara every day and not know it. So keep your eyes open and your heart ready. The quiet kid in class, the lonely person on the bus, they might just shock you one day with something amazing. Hey, let's talk about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What did Clara's story make you feel? Did it get your heart racing when she stood up to the bikers? Did it make you cheer when she showed who she really was? I want to hear all about it. And if you loved the story, if it made you smile or think or jump up and down, give it a big thumbs up. It's a little way to say, wow, that was cool, and it helps me know you liked it. The stars were popping out now, tiny lights in the dark sky. The town was peaceful, better than it'd ever been. Clara's bench was gone, but her mark was everywhere, in the new homes, the happy faces, the clean streets. She didn't need to be loud or flashy to win. She just needed to be herself, strong, smart, and sneaky in the best way. So next time you're quick to look away from someone, remember Clara. Think twice. Be kind. You never know, they might just surprise you, and that's the best part of all.